Venezuela launches military drills along border with Colombia. In Ecuador, Colombian refugees have been forcibly moved across the capital, Quito. And 500,000 separatists rally in Barcelona as they call for independence on Catalans' National Day. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. This is from the South. One day after unceremoniously firing former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton, President Donald Trump told the press that a number of mistakes led to Bolton's dismissal. Among these were offending the North Korean leader and being out of line on his attitude towards Venezuela.
He made some very big mistakes when he talked about the Libyan model for Kim Jong-un. That was not a good statement to make. You just take a look at what happened with Gaddafi. That was not a good statement to make, and it set us back. No, I disagreed with John Bolton on his attitudes on Venezuela. I thought he was way out of line, and I think I've proven to be right. But we are always watching Venezuela very, very closely.
In response to Bolton's departure, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said ties between the two countries will not likely to change.
As for how it will affect Russia-US relations, I won't guess. The policies in the United States are defined by the president. He has many times supported normalization of trade, economy, humanitarian and political ties between our countries, and increase of cooperation in the world.
Meanwhile, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has urged the U.S. to distance themselves from warmongers, as Bolton was seen as one of the strongest backers of a hard line towards Iran.
Americans should know that warmongering and warmongers are not in their favor. They should put aside both warmongers and warmongering and maximum pressure.
Military exercises continue in Venezuela with all branches of the Bolivarian Armed Forces deployed along the border with Colombia. President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Nicolás Maduro, ordered the Venezuela Sovereignty and Peace 2019 drills. President Maduro said all defensive systems are being tested in order to safeguard Venezuela's territorial integrity amid attempts to intervene from Colombia. Heads of the military say that the country's defense will not fall in provocations.
Venezuela has people who defend it, with ideas, with words, with politics, with diplomacy, and with weapons if it's necessary, to defend it with weapons. Venezuela has a Bolivarian nation armed forces, united to the people, ready, prepared, and well armed to defend the homeland.
We move to Colombia now, where at least 30 hectares of land have been destroyed by forest fires in the Antioquia region. Firefighters have managed to bring the fires under control near Cali, as there have been no reports of injuries. Authorities have not ruled out that the fires were set intentionally, but harsh drought conditions have been blamed for the strength and the rapid spread of the fires.
Until now, part of the situation has been controlled. At the top of the forest, we have officers who are watching over small fires that may restart. We can confirm that 20 hectares of vegetation have been affected. It was a fire that spread with great force, which threatened some homes. However, residents managed to evacuate or were isolated from the fires.
Colombian refugees in Ecuador have been forcibly sent to different locations in the capital, Quito. They are asking the government to guarantee protection. Denise Herrera with the details.
A few months ago, 38 Colombian families requested international protection in Ecuador. They have camped outside the United Nations Refugee Agency in Quito, but have since been forcibly removed by the police. However, they continue journeying through the city without any protection.
In the morning they moved us, and we don't want to move, but the UNHCR, along with the other entities, decided to remove us.
The families say their integrity and security were violated, as they have been sent to other locations that were not as safe.
We have suffered more threats, attempts, and human rights violations, and there are already 2 Colombians who were captured in the motels where UNHCR moved us to.
The families requested the refugee status in Ecuador because they say they are the victims of the armed conflict in their country. They say their lives are greatly at risk. Recently, they have also requested resettlement to a third country.
In the news, they say that we are criminals and prostitutes, and that is not true. The same people, well, we were almost 40 days, the same neighbors. They gave us food and allowed us to use their bathrooms. Imagine, UNHCR had told those same people that they should not help us with food or water, nothing.
The families have assured that their police records are up to date, so they cannot understand how the state and the international organizations are not doing anything. Meanwhile, these families continue moving through the city until they can find a solution. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
Officials in the Bahamas say about 2,500 people have been registered as missing in the wake of devastating Hurricane Dorian. Thousands remain in shelters for over a week now as Dorian decimated homes on Grand Bahama and Abaco Islands. Carl Smith, the National Emergency Management Agency spokesperson, said database processing is underway to counter-check the lists with those in shelters.
At this point, there are approximately 2,500 individuals registered on the Bahamian government register. This list has not yet been checked against government records of who is staying in shelters or who have been evacuated. The database processing is underway. Some individuals who evacuated from Abaco and Grand Bahama have not yet registered with social services. We encourage them to do so.
As the Bahamas still struggles to recover from the devastation left behind by Hurricane Dorian, the country is bracing for more inclement weather. There could be more flooding on the already hurricane-battered islands as showers and thunder showers have a 20% chance of developing while passing through.
As you can see on the screen behind me, we have a border of showers and thunderstorms over the southeast Bahamas, and it's moving westward and should move across the entire Bahamas over the next few days. Now, this system has a limited chance, about 20% chance of development as it passes through the Bahamas. Chances would increase once it moves across South Florida and into the Gulf of Mexico, which should be on the weekend. Regardless of development, this system is expected to produce locally heavy rainfall and gusty winds over the Bahamas through the weekend. We expect showers to begin in the parts of the Northwest Bahamas tomorrow, Central Bahamas tonight, parts of the Northwest Bahamas tomorrow, including New Providence, and then Friday and Saturday over Abaco, Grand Bahama, Bimini area. But still expect showers, thunderstorms possible, flooding in low-lying areas over the Bahamas over the next couple of days, next few days.
A daring shootout between police and drug traffickers in Belize has left 3 injured and led to the seizure of 1,200 parcels of cocaine. The drugs were found on board an aircraft that landed on an illegal strip of the coastal road. 6 people, including 4 from Honduras and 1 each from Mexico and Ecuador, have been held as a result of the operation. Police Commissioner Chester Williams says his officers, acting on prior information, were in place when the plane landed and quickly moved in.
While they were unloading the cargo, the security forces made a move towards them. In that process, they drove off with one of the vehicles and the security forces in pursuit, some of them in pursuit, while others remain in the area of the plane. Shots were fired and our officers returned fire, during which 2 of the fleeing suspects were injured to the hand. A 3rd person was in the bushes with gunshot injury.
Meanwhile, the government of Belize has signed a $3 million loan agreement with the CARICOM Development Fund to implement the country's growth and development plan. Prime Minister Dean Barrow and the fund's CEO, Ronald Soomer, signed the financing agreement. The credit line will be used to provide financing to projects in the productive sector, including in agriculture, manufacturing, cultural industries, and tourism. Emphasis will also be on small and medium-sized businesses with a gender equity, energy efficiency, and climate resilience focus. Jamaica's opposition People's National Party (PNP) is set to unveil its newly restructured shadow cabinet after the party's annual conference on September 22nd. The reshuffle comes on the heels of a number of resignations from the existing shadow cabinet lineup. It's one of several internal party issues confronting the recently returned president of the PNP, Dr. Peter Phillips, who defeated Peter Bunting last Saturday to remain leader of the opposition party. Phillips and Bunting are now set to hold private talks later on Wednesday. That meeting coincides with Bunting's resignation from the shadow cabinet and comes amid criticism about the tone and content of Phillips' victory speech.
Now hear me. This is not a time to celebrate and to leave out the others in the party. We must come together.
Welcome back to From the South. South Sudan President Salva Kiir and former rebel leader Riek Machar have agreed to form a transitional government. According to the Information Ministry, the new administration would be set up by mid-November as originally planned. Kiir and Machar have held their first face-to-face talks in months in South Sudan's capital, Juba. The two leaders signed a peace agreement last year to end a civil war in which thousands died. Protests are continuing in northern Mali as citizens call for improved roads and security. Hundreds of young people blocked access to the country's main airport as demonstrations persist. Only one road has been built since Mali's independence in 1960, and the asphalt has virtually disappeared. Apart from the constant threat of jihadis and armed militias, Mali's infrastructure has also suffered from bad weather, a lack of state services, and alleged widespread corruption.
At first, we barricaded the roads, but so far the government has not provided any answers, and that makes it seem like Timbuktu is not part of Mali. As if Timbuktu is abandoned, Timbuktu is betrayed. That's why we switched to a Plan C, and Plan C brought us to Timbuktu Airport.
In the United States, relatives of the Ethiopian Airlines plane crash victims have gathered to mourn their loved ones 6 months after the disaster. Before holding a vigil outside the Department of Transportation, families met with U.S. Transportation Secretary Elaine Keyo. On Monday, the Ethiopian police said the identification process of human remains from the incident was now complete. The U.S. Congress will call in Boeing executives to testify on what led to the disaster. The body of Zimbabwe's former president and founder Robert Mugabe has arrived at the country's main airport. The location of Mugabe's funeral remains a mystery due to a dispute between his family and the government. His wife Grace and Zimbabwean Vice President Kembo Mohadi were among those accompanying the body on the plane coming from Singapore, where Mugabe was treated until his death. Meanwhile, in the village where Mugabe grew up, large crowds have gathered in anticipation of his final return and farewell.
They had sacrificed themselves for Zimbabwe. It's very easy to take that for granted, but not now, when we have to realize one of the founding fathers and the first black prime minister in a new Zimbabwe who brought from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe is gone. History is no longer the same, and Zimbabwe is no longer the same.
Zimbabwe's main opposition party has postponed the celebration of its 20th anniversary to attend the late president's funeral. The leader of the Movement for Democratic Change, Nelson Chamisa, announced that his party has postponed its anniversary celebration in honor of the late president Robert Mugabe. Chamisa also said that the party leadership was going to attend the funeral of the late president. The MDC anniversary has been postponed until September 28th.
We are not going to be trying and show ourselves to be, more mourners than the others, or more people who are believing than the others. This is an event to give honor to Mr. Mugabe. It's only necessary that we do that. Mind you, we say that he contributed positively and negatively. And let's be objective about the contributions. We will not emphasize the negative, but the opportunity to do so is with us, so that we are able to build on the negatives. We are able to then correct the mistakes, right the wrongs, and also negate the negatives that we have seen. It's all up to us, and we have the duty as people, as citizens, together.
Nicaragua's International Tourism Fair, Nicatur 2019, has put on display the country's touristic attractions such as nature sites, sports, and food such as cocoa, which is produced in the city of San Juan del Sur. Let's have a look.
In the coastal city of San Juan del Sur, Nicaragua takes advantage of the big wildlife reserves where highlands and beaches merge. And sport and culinary activities are made with native products like the cocoa of the Pacific South area. The International Tourism Fair Nicatur 2019 demonstrates the confidence investors have in Nicaragua's tourism sector.
I came here 15 years ago, and now I am the manager of a company that produces cocoa on the Atlantic coast. The most important thing for the country is the creation of employment on the Atlantic coast and the development of cocoa for export, and also for value addition within the country so it can be turned into finished products with more value.
The area also has a vibrant cultural tourism sector with monuments such as the Christ of Mercy, which is 28 meters high. From the mountain, the visitors can have a bird's eye view of the city of San Juan del Sur. The town has restaurants, hotels, and inns, having a community economy based on tourism.
Our first resource is the human resource, which has a lot of potential. And our second resource are the natural resources. In any case, we have a lot of natural resources, such as beaches, forests, volcanoes, and a variety of factors that are in our favor to have a touristic explosion, a development explosion.
In addition to the beach and town hospitality, the city has also added the adventure park Las Nubes where you can do canopy. You can climb down from 14 stations with harnesses and ropes. The forest, the mountain, and the beach coexist in a city that promises to continue growing thanks to the friendly ecological tourism.
The economically active population of San Juan del Sur that depends on tourism is about 80%. The other 20% is distributed in fishing and the sustainable farming where people farm in the rural communities for home consumption, but also they sell some of that production to earn an income for their other needs.
Therefore, Nicatur 2019 is an important event for the future of the Central American nation.
Back to you from the south. Over 500,000 people gathered in Barcelona, Spain to call for Catalonian independence and to celebrate the National Day of Catalonia. Waving red and yellow Estelada Catalan flags, protesters gathered in Plaza España to demand the release of their jailed leaders. This march comes just weeks ahead of a crucial ruling by the Supreme Court in the trial of 12 separatist leaders who led a 2017 bid for independence and a short-lived independence declaration soon after. This in turn triggered Spain's worst political crisis in decades.
Our objective for the following weeks and following months is the independence of Catalonia. I think that this is a clear message to the Europe and to the world.
Spirits are a bit down this year compared to previous years. In the previous years, the streets were full, and today they have not been so. I suppose it is due to the repression and pressure of the Spanish state on all Catalans.
Emergency services workers have protested in France's capital, Paris, against the healthcare budget reforms proposed by the government. On Monday, the health minister announced an $830 million in funding over 3 years and new measures to support emergency services. The workers, who have been striking for 6 months, are, however, demanding additional funding and resources. They claim the allocated funds are inadequate and will compromise patient care.
The demands of the emergency services is to have more people, more beds, whether on the spot or later on, in other services. We need more staff, qualified people, meaning people who are well paid.
Scotland's highest court of appeal has ruled that UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament is unlawful. The judges said the PM was attempting to prevent Parliament holding the government to account ahead of Brexit. The suspension, however, won't be immediately lifted, as the Supreme Court will now hear an appeal from the government. This judgment overturns an earlier ruling that the courts did not have the power to interfere in the Prime Minister's political decision. Parliament was prorogued on Tuesday and is not set to return until mid-October.
Each opinion expresses the view that the advice given by the government to Her Majesty the Queen to prorogue Parliament from 9th September to 14th October was unlawful, and that therefore the prorogation itself is unlawful.
We have a court saying that the prorogation of Parliament is unlawful and is null and void, to use the court's own language. That means, in my view, Parliament should be recalled immediately, and I would call on the Prime Minister to do the right thing, bring Parliament back from its unlawful prorogation and allow that essential work of scrutiny to continue.
Forest fires are raging in the Indonesian island of Sumatra, prompting the government to deploy 9,000 personnel to help fight them. Indonesia's disaster management agency has reported 62 hotspots for on-farmland and plantation concessions. These blazes are often started to clear land for farming in the world's largest producer of palm oil. The recurrence of fires this year has forced Indonesian President Joko Widodo to make a permanent ban on clearing new forest land for farming.
Most of the hotspots are on the boundaries between plantations and uncultivated areas. We have also observed that mostly 80% of the areas that had been burned have now become plantations.
And staying in Indonesia, the country's third president, Baharudin Yusuf Habibie, has died at the age of 83. Habibie died of heart failure at an army hospital where he had been undergoing treatment since September 1st. His unpopular presidency was the shortest in modern Indonesia's history, but was transformative. President Joko Widodo offered condolences to Habibie's loved ones. Meanwhile, the government called for a period of national mourning until Saturday. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter.